When I were a lad, you didn't dream about becoming an internet entrepreneur, or worse still, a TV presenter. No, what you wanted to do was drive one of these. Why? Because it's powered by steam, and the idea of being a train driver was impossibly romantic in an 8-year-old's mind. Of course, these days, steam has been replaced by boring and efficient diesel and electric. But there's one team of enthusiasts who refuse to let the dream of steam die. And they're building a brand new steam locomotive from scratch. So, how will they do it? Back in 1825, there were just 40 kilometres of public rail track and 2 locomotives in the whole world. 50 years later, and that had grown to 250,000 kilometres of rail track and a whopping 70,000 locos. That transport revolution was powered by steam. Steam engines ruled the railways for almost 150 years. Sadly, it's now over 40 years since Britain's last mainline steam passenger service ran, on August the 11th, 1968. But today, I've come to a quiet railway siding in Darlington, because tucked away in a shed here are a team of enthusiasts who've spent the last 18 years engaged in an extraordinary engineering challenge. Building a brand new steam locomotive from scratch. One of the engineers working on the project is Peter Nessum.
Well, basically everything you see is new.
Right.
We've completely gone from scratch with everything. This is basically the control centre.
Right. So this is the engine driver would be on this plate.
Yes,
this is where they
and
would be.
the fireman.
Right.
They would sit. This is complete. You know, the driver would sit there.
Right.
The fireman would be at that side.
Right. The Tornado, as it's known, is costing over £3 million to build and is based upon the A1 loco, 49 of which were built for British Rail and used to run on the East Coast Main Line. The A1 was a truly humongous hunk of metal, designed to pull the heaviest passenger trains of the time. 15 coaches long and weighing a whopping 500 tons, it could manage speeds of 110 kilometres an hour. One of the class completed over 154,000 kilometres in a single year, but by 1966 all 49 had been sent for scrap. Fortunately, the team managed to track down various design drawings at York's National Railway Museum, as David Elliott explains.
Hello there. Hi, Robert. Hi, nice to meet you.
Hello,
Hi.
pleased to meet you. Welcome to the A1 Steam Locomotive Trust.
Thank you very much. Well, it's very obvious you're the man with the plan here. You obviously know what's going on, because that is just so impressive.
Because the plans weren't complete, it took a lot of detective work to put together a full set.
If you look at this drawing, for example, there it says A1
Yes.
class, and that gives us a lead that this is almost certainly a drawing that applies to this locomotive.
Right.
And we did this over a 2-year period, going in for 2 or 3 days at a time at the National Railway Museum, ploughing through these 20,000 drawings and setting aside the ones we wanted. And when we thought we had something like a full set, we negotiated with them to take a large electronic scanner in and scanned all the drawings at full size. And this is effectively a print
Right.
off one of those scanned drawings.
What's more, because the Tornado needs to run on a modern main line, it also needed to be fitted with modern systems like radios, air brakes, a train warning and protection system, and a black box data recorder. As in the original, most of the components were made as steel castings.
It is the crank. It's a little cylinder. So basically, you've got your piston.
There's a
just
piston
to
right in the
forward
middle?
it, yes, with the rod, and this drives the crank on the first set of wheels in the inside. On the outside, you've got to drive in the next set of wheels down. Everything we see on the outside is duplicated in a different way inside of here.
The big news today is that they're ready to fit the last major element of the train, the driver's cab.
So we're going to lift this up. This is the last big lump of the train of the engine to be put on, is that right?
Yes?
And am I allowed to do that?
Yes, I'll give you careful instructions on it.
Having rather foolishly agreed to let me operate the crane, I set about trying to manoeuvre their precious cab into position.
So I'm going to scratch the paint.
Still, it's only £3 million worth of train, so I'm sure they'll forgive me any minor prangs.
Oh, that's a problem. We need to take this off. That's it, right. Down at that, and she's home. Near enough.
That's it.
That's just about there, yes.
After some careful juggling, the cab is finally in position and everyone can relax, not least of all me. The Tornado will be the first new steam loco in Britain for almost 50 years, and when completed will provide steam special services running on part of its original route between York and Newcastle. It's time to wave goodbye to the old Robert Llewellyn because I'm about to fulfill a childhood ambition and become a steam train driver. Actually, this better be good or I'm going to be so disappointed. Back in Darlington, they're still putting the finishing touches to the Tornado. So in the meantime, I've come to the North Yorkshire Moors Railway to experience what it's like to drive a steam locomotive under the watchful eye of my instructor, Chris Cubitt.
Good morning. It looks like very important work you're doing.
Oh yes, well at the beginning of the day all locomotives have got to be prepared.
Right.
And all the oiling points where you'll find a cork, there's many corks on this locomotive.
So it's just a cork that's put in the...
Yes, well
it's what holds the oil in.
Yes, you top it up with the oil.
Right.
And then inside we have what we call a trimming, which siphons the oil over onto the bearing. That's got to...
Bearings oiled, I'm ready to hit the rails. But it turns out going anywhere in the Repton is a little more involved than simply turning a key.
Fire, steam. God.
Fortunately, they'd got the fire going the night before.
It's such a big fire.
Yes. Well, we're going to take the engine round for coal now.
All right.
The vacuum brake is on, but we still need the handbrake off before we can move it.
Right.
So if you turn the brake,
That's the handbrake.
anti-clockwise,
Okay.
until it stops turning.
Okay. Oh,
And then we always leave it like that so nobody can walk into it.
Oh, I see. Good idea. Yeah.
First up, we need to fill the tender with enough coal for the trip.
Now above our head, we have two hoppers with about 12, 13 tonne of coal in each.
Right.
It's a little more involved than topping up my 2CV, and we first need to turn on water valves to prevent us being engulfed in coal dust.
Up a bit more.
Bit more?
Bit more. That'll do for
I don't want to spill it over the edge and make a mess.
That'll do for today.
There's so much of it coming out.
You put about maybe 1.5, 2 tonne in there.
Well, that's very easy.
So that's about £200, please.
Right.
Job done. But before we can fill up with water, the boiler first needs to be given a hot steam clean to clear it of sludge, which can settle at the bottom. So a blowdown valve is opened and the high-pressure steam forces any sludge out of the system.
It's dead easy, this train driving lark.
On the top of the tunnel, we have a water tank with about 6,000 gallons of water.
Right.
So when we open the valve, the water gushes out and fills up the tank.
Right. Is it going to reach, Charlie?
In all, the Repton needs at least 7,500 litres to allow for the journey and any possible emergencies. Water and coal on board, at last it's time to start building up a head of steam. Not just enthusiasm, but enough to power the Repton 19 kilometres from Gromont to Levisham.
Now that noise you hear is the water going into the boiler.
So that's being pumped because the boiler's under pressure, isn't it?
We're using boiler pressure to force the water into the boiler and overcome boiler pressure.
Right.
That's it. I'll lift it up a little bit.
Finally, with a toot from the whistle, we're underway.
I see what you mean.
And she's away.
Oh, we're moving. Woo!
The Repton loco I'm driving set the speed record for its class back in 1938, when it hit 153 kilometres an hour. I imagine I'll give Chris a cardiac arrest if I attempt to match that, so I reduce the amount of steam being fed through to the pistons.
Yeah.
Shoot it right down.
It's down. Oh, there.
Right.
Wow, that's my fault. I was doing a wheelie.
But soon we seem to be tootling along nicely enough.
Oh, that's it. Maximum power.
The North Yorkshire Moors Railway once ran all the way from Whitby to Pickering before it was closed in 1965. Fortunately, it was reopened in 1973, and at 29 kilometres, it's now the second longest heritage railway in the UK. Foolishly, I'd imagined train driving would be a chance to relax and nod at children sitting on farm gates who would gaily wave hankies at me. But it turns out you have to constantly balance the amount of steam pressure against how much you need. Otherwise, you'll burn up all the coal before you're halfway through the journey.
I'm going to sit down now.
After a few miles, it's time to see what Chris makes of my driving so far.
At present, you've done no real driving. You've just done the first bit,
Right.
which is going from A to B, doing nothing, watching. The next stretch of line from Goathland to Levisham,
Yeah.
where we've got a little bit of rising gradient, then a falling gradient, then we've got long sweeping curves where we're going to have to use the brake. This will test your driving skills on the next 6-9
Right.
miles of railway.
Right.
So
I'll be a bit busier on the
we've
next
still
bit.
got L plates on.
As we approach a hill, it's time for me to start shoveling coal. I have to get the amount right. Too little and the temperature won't rise enough. Too much coal risks damping the fire down. But then as we start coming downhill, it's time to apply the brakes before we come completely off the rails. When we finally pull into Levisham, I feel like I've run a marathon, but it was worth it.
OK, steam may be old technology and it may be dirty, but can anyone really love a diesel locomotive? There's something magical about steam trains. And with any luck, the A1 Peppercorn, which is being made just down the track, will soon be driving a whole new generation completely loco.